Good evening. I'm tying some tomato plants up as they're growing. We're getting close to the end for the post height for tying this one up, but should be just fine. It's got enough support. I wanted to walk around and show you the determinate tomatoes, the indeterminate tomatoes, and how much fruit is on each plant and what it looks like. Okay, I'm starting here by my Roma tomatoes. These are a determinate plant. Determinate means that there's a determined size to the plant. There's a determined amount of fruit that it's going to set, and a determined amount of blossoms that it will produce as well. It doesn't need as much support. You aren't going to prune as much, but once it's done setting its predetermined amount of fruit, the plant's going to be done. So the advantage to the indeterminate is as long as you still have the right conditions, it's going to continue to grow, it's going to continue to set blossoms, it's going to continue to produce fruit. So these are the Romas. These are kind of the smaller ones. Let me turn your bigger ones that are in here. There's our Romas. Lots and lots of fruit on that plant. These are a paste tomato. I haven't grown these in a while because I've been sticking with mainly the indeterminate tomatoes. So we'll see how we like these. I think it's going to be nice just to get a lot of tomatoes at one time. And then just to do a reset, take these plants out and either put something else in or plant some cover crop. Now the other plant that I have that's kind of similar is an Amish Paste. This one is an indeterminate, but it's like a paste tomato. So I have to stand up now. Now I'm 5'7", so this plant is pretty much within an inch or two of my height at this point, which is July 6th. I prune it to a single stem, and it's got these beautiful clumps of fruit right here. We've got a nice clump here. There is a third, a fourth is on its way, and there is a fifth that is in blossom, and a sixth that's in bud stage. So that's going to continue to grow. That's going to continue to produce fruit through the season as long as it doesn't get hit by disease or that kind of thing. And I've got probably like half a dozen or so of this kind in here. Now the other kind, this leaf, we call it a potato leaf. It's like a potato plant, unlike this type of leaf here. So I have two kinds and I can never tell the difference between, these are German pink or Brandywine. I can't quite tell the difference until maybe when they're ripe. So these are a big slicing tomato. These are going to get a lot bigger than this before they turn ripe. So again, single stem, lots and lots of blossoms, and this is probably about 4.5, 5 foot tall, as is this one here. I think this one, I'm not even going to attempt to say which is which. Now let's go look at a few others. Now the interesting thing about planting in multiple places in the garden, you kind of get a feel for the soil. Soil's pretty decent here. I have some planted at the far end. They're not as big. So I do think there's certain points, like I think this soil in this bed here may be better than where I just was. These plants are a little bit taller. I actually need to come through and tie these up. So we've got Amish Paste. I've got the German pink / Brandywines through here, and I've got a black strawberry. Now this plant here is the one I've shown. I accidentally topped it when I was pruning it. The interesting thing is I feel like the fruit's a little further along, so I think sometimes when you top them, that can be a strategy to tell the plant to just go ahead and put all its energy into producing the fruit. So that one's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 decent sized tomatoes on it. Probably a few more than some of the other ones like that, but it's cruising right along beautifully. Now the black strawberry, I'm kind of excited to see what this is going to look like. Now this is the one I accidentally, when I was tying it up, kind of damaged the stem back in here, but it recovered, so it's still doing okay. And this fruit has this beautiful, like, kind of blue-black look on it, and when it's ripe, this is going to be red, and this is about as big as this fruit is going to get. So I'm really excited to see what this is going to taste like. This is new for this year for me. But just look, and then look at those clusters of fruit on that Amish Paste tomato plant. So we got a couple Amish Paste side by side there. And then this one over here, all by its lonesome, is a Sunrise Bumblebee. This one it gets like a small yellow tomato on it, that the bottom is kind of getting attacked by a broccoli plant, is kind of a reddish color. It hasn't started to blossom yet, or hasn't started to ripen at all yet, but there's the coloring. I think that's really pretty. So we'll see. That one's coming along nicely. We've got one more bed. And we've got our Tumbling Tom too. Now, this bed here, this is telling me the soil isn't quite as good. This Roma is considerably smaller. Now it's a little bit crowded, but it's considerably smaller than the Roma at the other end of the tomatoes, or the other end of the garden. Now what I have here is I've got my Amano Orange at the far end. They tend to be my first producers, or my first tomatoes to ripen. Really sweet, meaty orange tomato plants, a nice slicer for a tomato sandwich or that kind of thing. So we've got, again, this is our Brandywine / German pink. There's a nice amount of fruit here. Now, this is kind of an unintentional experiment. I've got, here is Brandywine. I'm just going to start saying Brandywine tomato plant. Here is a second one. Now, this one, let me turn it around. This one got away from me, and it had a pretty developed Y on it, so I left it. So this one has 2 main leaders. So there's, instead of single stem, I've got 2 stems, and the one right beside it has 1. Now, if you compare here, this is the main stem, because this is where the first set of blossoms is. I've got 1, 2, 3 tomatoes on this one, and then there's 1 tomato on the other stem. Now the one that's a single stem that's right beside it has the same amount of fruit on it as the one that has the 2. And like I said, the second stem, which would have been the sucker, only has 1 tomato on it. I'm somewhat tempted just to chop it off, but I think I'm going to leave it on as an experiment to see, as we progress, how each one produces. And then these 3 here are our Amano Oranges. They have some beautiful clusters of fruit on them. Nice sized tomatoes there. I've been growing that one for a lot of years, and actually I have not purchased seed, I would say, in maybe 8 years or so. This has all been saved seed. So the nice thing is it kind of acclimates to your garden, your growing conditions, your climate, and it continues to get better a lot of times for your specific conditions if you're choosing fruit from your garden. So those are the tomato plants. And then one last little update on tomato plants. I have the Tumbling Tom tomato plant that was given to me by a dear friend slash in-law of in-law. So it's one of those family member, but I don't know if there's a category. Here is our Tumbling Tom tomato plant. When I first planted it, I'd snapped off the blossoms because I wanted it to put energy into developing plant and developing root in that pot. We are to the point of producing some fruit, and it has put off a ton of growth since we've had it in here. So that is looking absolutely fantastic. That's going to be fun to see. Thank you again, Kathy, for sharing that with us. And then, yeah, so let's just do one more view here. Our pole bean trellis that's 10 foot tall. We are now to the point where we have 1, 2, 3 that have overgrown the top, and probably at least a half a dozen that will here pretty soon. So that's just going to be an absolute wall of green very, very, very soon. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next video.